Good afternoon, and welcome to the webinar Lessons Learned, Citizen Advisory Committees, hosted by the Hispanic Federation and the National Low Income Housing Coalition. My name is Maritere Padilla Rodriguez. I'm the Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy of Hispanic Federation in Puerto Rico, and I'll be your moderator this afternoon. Before we start, we'll give a few seconds for people to join before we start giving the housekeeping instructions. Okay. Before we start, we want to share some housekeeping instructions. We're gonna have English to Spanish and Spanish to English interpretation services available. If you are not fully bilingual, you need to activate this tool now so that at any moment that you need the service, it will be already activated. You can do that clicking the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. It is important that you activate this feature now so that you can understand and get all the information that will be provided through the webinar. Also, in terms of housekeeping, as many of you know, the audience will be muted during the webinar. Please use the chat tool to share your comments. We want you to share your comments. Please do. You can find the chat in the chat box icon at the bottom of your screen. You can introduce yourself, your name, your organization name, or your state agency, the state or federal agency that you are representing. Also, you can send your questions at any time using the Q&A tool, which you can access in the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Some of the questions will be answered live during our Q&A sections after the presentations. And then lastly, we want everybody that is in the webinar to acknowledge that this webinar will be recorded up to the Q&A questions section. The Q&A section will not be recorded so that you can, feel comfortable making all the questions you want. And then before moving forward, I do want to repeat that we have interpretation services available, English to Spanish and Spanish to English. If you are not fully bilingual, this is the moment to activate this service, clicking the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. Thank you very much. Now we want to share the objectives of this webinar. First, we want to share Puerto Rico's experiences, wins, and challenges to create the first Citizen Advisory Committee for the administration of CDBG-DR funds after Hurricane Maria. Second, we want to promote effective collaboration between state agencies and nonprofit organizations. Third, we want to achieve the creation of new citizen advisory committees in other disaster jurisdictions. And fourth, if possible, we wish to create a national collaborative network of citizen advisory committees that will strengthen disaster preparedness and recovery to ultimately save lives during future disasters. Now, I want to introduce our panelists. The first one is me. As I mentioned before, my name is Maritere Padilla Rodriguez. I'm the Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy of Hispanic Federation in Puerto Rico. Then we'll hear from the amazing Noah Patton, who is the Director of Disaster Recovery at the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Then we'll share a short video from Rosana Torres Pizarro, who is the Director of the Washington, D.C. office of the Center for a New Economy. and is a former senior advisor to the Secretary on Puerto Rico at HUD. Then we will hear from Luis Gallardo Rivera, who is the Executive Director of Centro para la Reconstrucción del Hábitat. And finally, we'll learn from Dulce del Rio Pineda, she is an organizational coordinator of Mujeres de Isla in Culebra, Puerto Rico. I want to highlight that Luis Gallardo Rivera and Dulce del Rio Pineda are members of the Puerto Rico Citizen Advisory Committee. So now, as I mentioned, I'm a team member of the Hispanic Federation in Puerto Rico. For those that don't know Hispanic Federation, it is a nonprofit organization founded in New York in the 1990s with the objectives and purpose to empower Hispanic and Latino communities in all the United States, including the Puerto Rican diaspora. After Hurricane Maria, Hispanic Federation decided to open permanent operations in Puerto Rico. And since then, they have invested more than $55 million in more than 150 initiatives around the archipelago, focused on supporting a fair recovery and in projects on energy, agriculture, civil rights, and many other areas. Having said that, I want to establish that the objective of my presentation today is to share, to summarize the creation process of the Puerto Rico Citizen Advisory Committee, highlighting the important elements of the process, the key elements of the Citizen Advisory Committee structure, and also areas of opportunity to improve the committee in Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, everything started in 2017 when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, and we lost more than 3,000 people during the longest blackout in U.S. history. As many crises, Hurricane Maria intensified the urgency for communities to have a voice in the recovery decision-making process. Based on that need and urgency, in 2018, Puerto Rico received the first allocation notice of CDBG, the disaster recovery funds from the federal government that are administered by the Puerto Rico Housing Department. From this allocation, the advocacy efforts started to achieve the creation of a public participation space that will ensure the fair and effective use of these funds. Concurrently, in 2018, more than 15 organizations in Puerto Rico got together to create the housing coalition that we call Movimiento de Vivienda Digna. This coalition has the purpose to advocate the right to housing of the communities in Puerto Rico during the recovery process, and also to advocate for the fair use of the CDBG funds and administration within the Puerto Rico Housing Department. This housing coalition has been facilitated by Hispanic Federations since 2018, and all its members, as we will see, were key stakeholders during the creation process of the Citizen Advisory Committee. In 2019, Puerto Rico got the allocation notice of the CDBG mitigation funds. Those were around $8.2 billion allocated to the Puerto Rico Housing Department for mitigation purposes in response to Hurricane Maria and Irma. And within that allocation notice, we got the huge win that HUD was requiring the Puerto Rico Housing Department to create one or more citizen advisory committees that should meet in an open forum not less than twice annually, to provide increased transparency, to solicit and respond to public comment and input, and most importantly, to serve as an ongoing public forum to continuously inform the Puerto Rico Housing Department on their mitigation projects and programs. Having that win in terms of the allocation notice from HUD, in 2020, the Movimiento Vivienda Digna continued the advocacy and collaboration efforts with the Puerto Rico Housing Department to create the Puerto Rico Citizen Advisory Committee operational guide. I do have to say that within this process, the Puerto Rico Housing Department had a slow but constant trend of increasing collaboration. And I want to highlight this in the process because it was a long process, but I have to say that the Puerto Rico Housing Department kept moving forward in terms of opening the door of collaboration, and we hope that the new administration will keep, increasing that collaboration with the Movimiento Vivienda Digna. Then on 2021, after 3 drafts work back and forth from the members of the Movimiento Vivienda Digna and 1 other nonprofit organizations and the Puerto Rico Housing Department, the agency finally officially adopted the Puerto Rico Citizen Advisory Committee operational guide in May 2021. An important element of the guide is that even though the allocation notice was only for the mitigation funding, the Housing Department established the committee jurisdiction to include all CDBG, DR, and mitigation funding. Now I want to take a moment to highlight the key elements of the structure established in the operative guide that I think other disaster jurisdictions should consider while creating a citizen advisory committee in their jurisdictions. First, the guide requires a public appointment process. That means that the Secretary of Housing will receive recommendations of the members of who should be the member of the CAC. Also, the guide requires that the member of the CACs have a diverse representation, right? That's truly important. I want to highlight that the CAC has 15 members appointed. The guide also requires that the CAC always have the intention of providing visibility to the vulnerable communities that has been impacted by the disaster. Also, it provides the opportunity, to provide public input before new policies and programs are officially adopted by the agency under the CDBG-DR funding. Also, it gives the alternative to create subcommittees focused by topic or impacted sector. For example, if the agency is creating a program that will impact the agriculture sector, then the Citizen Advisory Committee has the alternative to create a subcommittee that will get together stakeholders from the agriculture sector that could provide input to that program. And for us, that's truly an important element of the committee. Then another one is that the Secretary of Housing can only reject the Citizen Advisory Committee advice if it conflicts with the collective interest or compliance with state and federal regulations and public policy. This is important because it helps in some way to avoid arbitrary rejections of the committee advice from the Secretary of Housing. And finally, and this is very important, the guide requires the Housing Department to create a Citizen Advisory Committee transparency portal where the public can see what is happening with the committee, the reports of the committee, the minutes, and also the Housing Department created a way of communication where the public can present requests to the committee. So having reviewed the key elements of the structure, I want to continue with the creation process where in 2022, The first 15 members of the Puerto Rico Citizen Advisory Committee were publicly nominated and appointed by the Puerto Rico Secretary of Housing. Unfortunately, in that year, the Housing Department amended the guide, and then the CAC's jurisdiction was limited to only the CDBG mitigation funding. This is something that we keep advocating to the Housing Department to return to the original jurisdiction of the committee, that it covered all the CDBGDR funding. On a daily basis, I know the CAC still provides recommendations for the CDBGDR programs, but it should be officially adopted as the jurisdiction in the guide. Then in 2023 and 2024, the Citizen Advisory Committee performed public forums in Mayagüez, Arecibo, Fajardo, Vieques, and Culebra, and some program guidelines were reviewed. I'm gonna let Luis Gallardo and Dulce de Rio Pineda, who are members of the CAC, to talk more about these experiences with you. And now in 2025, we have a new administration. The new Puerto Rico Secretary of Housing already met with the Movimiento de Vivienda Digna in April and has started the reactivation and appointment process of the new Citizen Advisory Committee. So which are the next steps for the Puerto Rico Citizen Advisory Committee? We are, the Secretary of Housing has to complete the public appointment process. The Movimiento de Vivienda Digna already presented their nominations, and we know some of our members have been invited to be part of the CAC. Also, we will keep holding the line of advocacy and collaboration with the Puerto Rico Housing Department to achieve a truly effective Citizen Advisory Committee. This is a high priority in the face of the new hurricane season and the challenges that FEMA and HUD are facing to support disaster preparedness and emergency response and recovery. Our goal as Hispanic Federation and member of the Movimiento de Vivienda Digna is to give a voice to communities and collaborate with the Puerto Rico Housing Department to achieve Puerto Rico's just recovery and save lives in future disasters. I hope that the state agencies that are here today and the nonprofit organizations will see this as an invitation to create a Citizen Advisory Committee in their jurisdictions with collaboration between them. Now, I will yield the floor to Noah Patton from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, who will continue with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello. Hello, my name is Noah Patton, Director of Disaster Recovery at the National Low Income Housing Coalition. For folks that do not know, we're an organization founded in 1974, dedicated to achieving racially and socially equitable public policy that ensures people with the lowest incomes have quality homes that are accessible and affordable in communities of their choice. In addition to our pure housing work, we also facilitate the disaster housing recovery, research, and resilience initiative that I lead as the Director of Disaster Recovery. That initiative also includes the Disaster Housing Recovery Coalition, which is a group of over 900 local, state, and national organizations working to ensure that all disaster survivors receive the assistance that they need to fully recover. So we do lots of different things, including federal advocacy around disaster administrative policies and laws, information sharing between different groups, kind of like this presentation, technical assistance, as well as kind of supporting state and local advocacy where folks are in need. I will take the next slide. Cool. Thank you. I wanted to make sure that we're all fully understanding what CDBGDR is, so we can continue the conversation at a level playing field. So CDBG-DR, which if you can say 3 times fast, they let you be a disaster recovery reform advocate, uh, is HUD's long-term disaster recovery program. Congress has approved $100 billion through that program since 1992. But the program itself, while it is flexible, it can be used for everything from housing construction to job training to homeless services. The program itself isn't permanently authorized, which means it kind of its rules operate in a different way than many other programs. So we actually have a bill that we champion called the Reforming Disaster Recovery Act, which is a bill that would can permanently authorize the program and kind of standardize a lot of these requirements. And of course, my favorite part of the program, seeing that I work at the National Low Income Housing Coalition, is that 70% of the total allocation must benefit low and moderate income households. I'll take the next slide. So, why are we here? We're here because there's a thing that was published in January of this year called the Universal Notice. That is the set of rules for all future CDBG DR allocations. So all of those future allocations will relate back to this Universal Notice, which is why they call it universal. So it was written by HUD, but we provided direct feedback, through our partners at the Disaster Housing Recovery Coalition, as well as Hispanic Federation commented on it as well. While this universal notice was significantly rewritten by the administration, they left in a very important part of it that I was very happy to see. So I'll take the next slide. So within that universal notice, they left in a recommendation. Initially, it was a requirement, but now it is a recommendation that state and local governments that are receiving CDBG-DR funds create citizen advisory groups to provide input, provide advice, and recommendations on the recovery process. So taking from the direct language of the universal notice, HUD is recommending that this group can act as a continuous bridge between the public and decision makers. Historically, in CDBG-DR, there's only kind of one public comment period, and when that public comment period is over, that's it for public participation. So with this citizen advisory group, there's a continuous source of feedback on recovery programs. It recommends that these groups be composed from a community who volunteer. They could either be volunteers or they could be appointed, like in the case of Puerto Rico. And it recommends that the group review policies and procedures at least every year. But again, just the floor. We're shooting for the ceiling here. And so definitely recommend folks checking in with whatever citizen advisory committee they can create more than just once a year. But suffice to say, I think the work that the Movimiento has done on the Citizen Advisory Committee in Puerto Rico has been stellar. I think the willingness of the Puerto Rico of Vivienda to participate in this and really, invest in the creation of this body is amazing and is unique, I think, throughout the United States in terms of creating this source of continuous feedback. I did want to call out that, there has been catastrophic flooding in Texas. There was a shocking loss of life. I think I can say for everybody here that all of our thoughts are with the impacted families. And while they're just starting their kind of recovery right now, we'll do what we can to help. And I think that things like this, the Citizen Advisory Committee and the work that the Movimiento has been doing, and being gracious enough to kind of share their homework with all of us can help ensure a more equitable disaster recovery in places like the Texas Hill Country and in places across the country. So with that, I will pause, I believe, for a video.
Yes. Thank you, Noah. Thank you very much, and for reminding us of the importance of the collaboration. Now we are going to share a video from Rosana Torres Pizarro from the Center of the New Economy. That she was the former advisor on Puerto Rico to HUD previously, and has a message for us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rosana Torres, and I'm part of the team at the Center for a New Economy.
A ver, repite ese share audio.
That worked just there.
Hi, I'm Rosana Torres, and I'm part of the team at the Center for a New Economy, Puerto Rico's first and foremost think tank. Starting in 2020.
It works fine. Dale play.
2021, I had the opportunity to participate in HUD's Citizen Advisory Committee, that whole process that was done in Puerto Rico. It wasn't perfect, but that was actually part of it. The learning process often includes friction, and that friction in this context is a necessary step towards understanding each other's differences, different point of views, and ultimately in each other. So I want to take just a few minutes of your time to share why I truly believe that this type of engagement is not only essential, but it's transformative when it comes to shaping housing policy generally, but also disaster mitigation strategies that truly work for the people that have been impacted or that will be impacted by those decisions. Citizen advisory committees create the space for residents to participate directly in the decisions that affect their neighborhoods, their different housing options, and their future in their community. What makes the process so powerful is not just the chance to speak at a table. It is about the chance to shape the solutions. Now, communities know where the needs are, right? They know which streets flood, the schools that they like, they know what services are missing. And that kind of knowledge is invaluable to policymakers. When you bring that local insight into the policymaking room, it also creates a sense of ownership, and that in turn, and this is good for policymakers and politicians alike, it increases the chances that those policies will actually stick and that they will deliver results, tangible results that people are satisfied with. But to really move that needle, public engagement needs to be paired with strong evidence-based counsel. Right? Not every idea that comes to the table is one feasible, nor can it be implemented correctly. So that means also creating the space for urban planners, for policy professionals, for researchers to work side by side with members of the community and decision makers. And we've seen this many times. It can be replicated again. We've seen it done through different housing congresses. I'm glad that the citizen advisory committees are statutorily mandated as well. And this is great because these are the spaces where different sectors can come together to brainstorm and decide strategies. The policymakers, the researchers, they can help communities answer questions like, well, has this idea even been tried before? What were the results? What needs to change? Are there any legal barriers? So by integrating local stories with the technical knowledge and expertise and historic point of view, we can avoid repeating past mistakes and instead propose creative, grounded, and forward-looking solutions. Of course, designing in an inclusive and a collaborative process isn't easy. When you bring many voices to the table, especially when there's competing interests, conflict is inevitable, and it makes for harsh and hard meetings. But that doesn't mean that it's a failure. In fact, I think that it's a future recommendation. Mediation is important for these processes so that there is conflict, but it's not done in a conflictive manner, an antagonistic manner. There should be an acknowledgement that that tension is part of the process. And that's what, just that acknowledgement can help you manage expectations. And there will be a learning curve for both governments and stakeholders, and that's okay. What matters is having a structure that really makes room for that type of disagreement and channels it productively and keeps the focus on what the shared goal is. In the end, the value of a citizen advisory committee isn't just about checking the box on participation. It should be about improving how we create public policy. And that only happens when it's rooted in trust and transparency, in research, in the participation of communities. It's when we marry expertise and communities into workable ideas and solutions. And so I'm glad to see that Puerto Rico is becoming a model, an example for other communities. And I'm sure that we can deliver all the stories to accompany that learning process that will inevitably come with these efforts. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry I couldn't be there, but I hope to join you in the future.
So thank you very much to Rosanna for sharing her experiences with the Citizen Advisory Committee with us. Sorry for the audio challenges. This is live, but the important thing is that the message of Rosanna, people can hear me?
Yes.
The message of Rosanna has been delivered. Now we're gonna continue with our presentations. Now we'll have Luis Gallardo from Centro de la Reconstrucción del Hábitat, who will share his experiences as member of the CAC, member of the Movimiento de Vivienda Digna, and Executive Director of Centro de la Reconstrucción del Hábitat.
Hello, everybody. My name is Luis Gallardo. I'm the Executive Director of the Centro para la Reconstrucción del Hábitat, or the Center for
Luis,
Habitat.
excuse me, can you check your audio?
You can't hear me?
We can hear him okay.
Okay, I'm getting thumbs up, so I'm presuming that I'm heard well. But if anything, just let me know again. My name is Luis Gallardo. I'm the Executive Director for the Centro para Reconstrucción del Hábitat, or the Center for Habitat Reconstruction, or CRH for short in its Spanish acronym. We are a nonprofit organization that is involved in numerous spaces that coincide with resiliency, recuperation, and so on. But before diving into our organization, I wanted to share this photo. This is one of the public meetings that we participated in coordination with the Department of Housing here in Puerto Rico, and I had the opportunity to participate in one of these. It was quite a number of meetings, but the CAC members, we kind of divided the responsibility, and I was able to participate in one of them, and it was a great experience. Obviously, as Rosana mentioned in her opening, we're very accustomed to, in the grant administration world, both nonprofits and government, for citizen participation requirements to be, pro forma, like just check it off on the box, publish a public notice, or put something on a website, or hold a public hearing. And for too often have we seen local governments, for example, hold public meetings just to check off a mark, and nobody goes. And we've walked into some public hearings to participate, and we're the only ones there. And again, the particular government or nonprofit that had to do the public hearing, they just need to carry out the hearing even if nobody shows up, and they could comply with those requirements. So if we're looking for a true substantive participation, then we need to kind of think outside of the box. And I think that's where the CAC can come in. And putting that, into the context, talking a little bit about how our organization kind of got into these spaces, we could jump to the next slide. We work a lot with local governments and community groups to address abandonment and vacancy within each of their communities. Every CAC member has its own area of specialty. There are some that deal specifically with homeless populations, others that do workforce capacity building, their neighborhood associations, and so on. So there's a good diverse mix of people within the group. And obviously we deal with a very specific subsection of the housing issue, where we talk about vacancy and abandonment, how it represents environmental and health risks. So we can contribute from that space, but in collaboration with other groups, as well as staff from the housing department, I think really great things can happen. So in our day-to-day work, we constantly come into contact with neighborhood groups, community leaders, individuals who may have a housing need, individuals who may live next to an abandoned property, or Hurricane Maria blew the roof off and they're having to suffer the negative economic, health and safety risks that come from that abandonment. And so we're on a day-to-day basis working directly with these individuals. So again, we try to contribute what we can from our position. We're not experts in other areas, but however we can collaborate, we try to do so. So our organization is about 8 years old, and again, we have a wide range of services and activities. And some of the things we do is collaborate with those local governments on doing things like inventories and participatory code enforcement programs. So when CDBG, DR, and later MIT kickstarted in Puerto Rico after the Irma and Maria hurricanes, we were very active in that space of public hearings, submitting comments and things of the sort. And I remember early on, some magnificent groups got together, including El Movimiento, and started petitioning for some sort of community advisory or action committee. I remember in different meetings and forums hearing the proposal, and our organization would sign those letters. We would join the requests and demand that there was a sort of citizen advisory committee. So we did that for years from an advocacy standpoint. And a lot of our groups do a lot of advocacy work. So it provides a great opportunity when we actually have the chance to participate in these types of processes and so on. We can jump to the next slide, and I could talk about some of the benefits that we identified from those CACs. And again, there are amazing groups doing some beautiful work, both inside of the CAC and outside of the CAC, making sure that there is constantly an exchange of information, feedback, and so on between the government agencies and local nonprofits and community groups. But some of the biggest benefits from having a community advisory committee, and one of the reasons why I personally, being a member of a CAC and living in a jurisdiction under a CDBG recovery activities, would suggest that other jurisdictions consider the possibility of a CAC, even if it's a recommended, if it's just a recommendation that they should seriously consider it. On the first hand, obviously, we talk about the transparency that a CAC represents. Again, it's not just a little box that we're checking off. We're actually seeking proactive participation from the community sectors. And, it's just not like a run-of-the-mill requirement that we need to complete with. So the fact that it's voluntary, if a jurisdiction decides to take it on, I would commend that jurisdiction, thinking that it's a good step forward. It's moving beyond what might be required as a minimum. And great thing about participating in the CAC is as nonprofit groups who directly serve individuals or community groups or collaborate with other entities, it allows us to be very aware of what's going on or what will be going on with the respective CDBG programs. And it gives us a great opportunity to vet these programs for potential controversies or problems they might cause. Again, we're addressing this from a different space. We are nonprofits, private groups, and citizens versus government administration. So it gives us the opportunity to share, and try to avoid problems that might occur, make recommendations, and so on. And a lot of these programs are very complex. Some of these have guidebooks that are hundreds of pages, and obviously, just shooting that out into the world you could overlook things. So I think that the CAC can assist government agencies kind of fill those gaps and review everything before it's published and have the opportunity to incorporate all that feedback. And as I mentioned a little earlier, we are advocates. So all of us are very accustomed to making demands, criticizing public programs. And, it puts us in a position where we kind of have to collaborate in finding solutions to some of those problems. So sometimes it could be a challenge taking off your advocacy hat and putting on your participation hat. Sometimes you need to take off the participation hat and jump back on the advocacy bandwagon. So it's a very dynamic position to be in, but I see it as another way for us to do advocacy. It's a seat at the table, and we have the opportunity to provide options, which at the end of the day might not be compatible with the HUD regulation, might not be compatible with the public policy. You might be a minority voice within the CAC, but at the end of the day, you do have that space, and you can advocate for those changes. There is shared accountability in the sense that the CDBG program and the local agency will be rolling out these programs. But again, prior to rolling out these programs had the opportunity and received feedback from the very groups that it may affect, or the very groups that may criticize it later. It gives us an opportunity to participate in that. So as we improve those programs and we could provide that feedback, it makes more bulletproof programs, or it could make more bulletproof programs where nobody could say that we didn't know that was going to happen, because we had the opportunity to sit down and talk about it. Again, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, it's up to us to make sure that we retain and maintain that active participation. And at the end of the day, it puts us in a position as nonprofits who provide services to different communities to also better, it positions us in a sense that we're better prepared to communicate these programs. When we receive individuals who might have a particular situation because they applied for a program and didn't qualify, we're a little bit more aware of how it works. We can help channel that, and it puts us in a position where our private non-CDBG programs are complemented, because we're aware of what's going on in that sort of grant ecosystem that's occurring around us. And finally, it is a win-win outcome. At the end of the day, like all of us, we just want better programs. We want more effective and more efficient programs. We want to make sure that programs are fair, that they are transparent, that they are accessible. We want to make sure that these programs are effective. I don't think anybody, not even public administrators or members of a local government or a state government intentionally want to blow billions of dollars without having anything to show for it. So I think at the end of the day, it is a win-win situation. We are advocates. We are looking at things from a specific standpoint, from our respective corners, but government is as well. But at the end of the day, we just want effective programs, and we want to make sure that the programs actually work. So at the end of the day, the better informed we are, the more we participate in these processes, the stronger the results at the end of the day. We can jump to the next slide. And again, trying to be as very transparent as well. I have to admit that during my participation in the CAC, I had certain frustrations as well. And I tried to sit down the other day and kind of articulate what those frustrations were in a way that I could share it with folks from other jurisdictions that are considering having a CAC, to try to provide kind of a heads up on some things you might need to look out for, and things that we could kind of brainstorm about how to prevent before getting there. As you know, those who are in this chat who work in NGOs or in community groups or who are community leaders, we are very passionate about our work. A lot of us are volunteers, or we work for nonprofits that have limited resources, and we put a lot more work into what we're getting out in regards to paychecks. So community leaders who have children and grandchildren, or they take care of a family member and they participate in these spaces, are putting in a lot of time and effort. And sometimes we bring in specific situations that might have occurred of our community, complaints, frustrations, ideas. And sometimes these complaints or ideas are channeled to us as well by coworkers, other folks within our circles, people within our communities. So it is very easy for a 1-hour CAC meeting to turn into a 3-hour brainstorming session. I kind of joke around in our organization that big meetings tend to be like group therapy sessions where we're all just getting things off of our chest. And we, leave those sessions feeling very empowered because we just, spent the last 2 or 3 hours venting and bouncing around ideas. But it's very easy for a meeting to be hijacked by these passions, by this energy, and we just go on for hours or even days. And again, we're all coming from very passionate spaces. So that's just something that we need to be aware of. And how can you channel all of that energy and all of that passion into actual proposals or counter proposals? How do we articulate our frustration or our complaints into actual proposals? So again, we can spend 3 hours talking about how we don't like a given CDBGDR or MIT program, whichever the case. We could spend hours discussing it. Well, what are we going to do about it? Well, we have the draft of the guidelines right in front of us. Now we have to sit down and read it. When maybe we need to propose an amendment to paragraph 4, section 3, or maybe we need to suggest a new section, or this section here we need to get rid of entirely. So that's a challenge. And again, working from the advocacy spaces, it's very easy for us to get into that rhythm of pointing out things that might be wrong, but sitting down and providing counter proposals, I think, is a special skill set that it takes time. And I think it's a never-ending mission for people to hone. And I find myself in that position too. So I have to check myself after 2 hours of a rant being like, wait a minute, like, what are we going to do about it? So at the end of the time, like I mentioned, we're spending time away from our families, from our work. A lot of us have emails that are stacked up and they keep, exploding while we're in these meetings. Volunteers, people who have to leave their children with a family member or take them to a meeting. We have limited resources in our spaces, and this is something that we need to take into consideration as well. Responding to a mega 200, 300 page action plan is very time consuming. You have to sit down, you have to research, you have to look beyond and see how they did it somewhere else, or how did they do it in New Orleans? How did they do it in Texas? That's a challenge. And it takes a lot of time and resources that a lot of our organizations do not have. And I think we need to be conscious about that as well. We might not be able to, comb through a 200-page document and make it perfect, but we do need to leverage things like subcommittees. We need to leverage our own specialized areas. We can have people take the lead, like so and so. Why don't you draft, a template for a testimony or some quick points, and we sit down and we can discuss it. So we do have limited resources, and our organization that deals a lot with housing, especially vacant abandoned housing, it's a very complex area, and it involves a lot of legal research, title issues, and so on. And sometimes we need to sit down and dedicate 4 or 5 hours of an attorney on our team to read a draft guidebook for us to point out bullets and things that we might need to recommend. So those are resources. That's money that it costs per hour. If your organization has the opportunity or the benefit or the privilege of having staff who could do that kind of work. And that's not really work that my organization, for example, can bill to a grant. We don't have funding to cover this kind of activity. So it is a challenge. And sometimes you need to pick and choose your battles. We might have 4 comment periods in front of us, and our organization, we can only take on 1 or 2, or we might not be able to take on anything that week. So that's a challenge, and we need to be very transparent with that. With the rest of our group and be like, hey, folks, like, I would love to respond to this. I do think there's things we need to address, but we really don't have the staff hours to sit down and hash out a 10-page testimony. So that could be a challenge. And run to the next slide, and I'll go ahead and start closing it out. When it comes to tips, how do we take those positive things, make them better? How do we take those challenges, and how do we turn it into something that we could, leverage later? First of all, and this again, these are tips that are geared primarily towards government officials that are considering creating a CAC. It's all on the staff. Like, if you have really good staff, and specifically staff that is sensitive and synchronized and familiar with working within communities, that's a big plus. Fortunately, the Department of Housing staff that has been assigned to the CAC, wonderful staff. They're very transparent. They're very accessible. They're very sensitive. They're always trying to find ways to make things happen. They, if they see that a topic has kind of been left out, they'll bring it up. They'll follow up. So at the end of the day, that community-friendly staff is crucial. Like, we can't just think about technocrats or planners or lawyers. We need to talk about staff that have worked with communities or are from these different sectors and can bring that experience to the table. So that's one of the biggest things I would suggest. If you're in a planning office or an emergency management office and you're considering a CAC, you might want to look to see who within your organization has done community outreach, community organization, or so on, or leverage partnerships with other organizations. That continuity across administrations is crucial. Again, one of the things that we applaud is the decision of the current administration to continue the CAC work. Actually, this morning we had a meeting with the new CAC group, and to see that we're picking up the ball and that they are actually sending us drafts of things that we'll be rolling out is magnificent. Not only do we need to maintain that momentum from year to year, but the fact that the administration has renewed the nominations of certain members of the previous CAC, and totally aware that we need to base those new nominations on things like experience, how things went down with the last CAC. There's a saying here, we can't cover the sun with our hand. No se puede tapar el sol con la mano. There are changes in public policy, how an administration perceives their CDBG recovery process. So those CAC groups will change. They will change, but I can attest that, for example, there are a number of Movimiento members who have remained continuous throughout both CACs. There is an institutional memory as well that we can preserve, and we can share these frustrations and share these proposals with the incoming groups as well. We need administrative support. Like I said, we don't have staff full time, or I don't have grants that we could bill hours for this kind of work. So the fact that the Department of Housing staff will help us do things like send out invitations for meeting, or circulate a poll and find a good meeting space, or get a space, or even things like taking minutes in a meeting can be a challenge for a volunteer or a person working from a nonprofit. So that administrative support is crucial. And one of the things that I really would like to promote in the future, and maybe this is an opportunity to, another tip that one could extract from this. Maybe we might not have the time to sit down and write a testimony, or there's 4 public comment periods that are running continuously. But we could talk to the housing staff, and they can get us a meeting with that CDBG MIT program officer, and we could sit down and do a Q&A, and we can do a brainstorm, and you can do a meeting minute, and you can extract your proposals from those suggestions. And I would have to say that one of my biggest frustrations with the CAC is we didn't take full opportunity of the public comment periods. There are a lot of programs that we did not have the capacity within the CAC to produce a testimony for. So like I said, we had to pick our battles. We might be able to send comments for this program, but for the next, we haven't. So whenever something happens with that program, or they need to amend it again, or there's a frustration, at times you're like, man, well, we could easily turn into our own enemies if we don't take advantage of these opportunities. So I would suggest coordinating those meetings, having brainstorm sessions. We've had program officers come in and explain us as if we were fresh, new to the particular program from A to Z, how this specific program works. And that really helps us as well be better advocates and monitor as well the things that pass in front of us. And at the end of the day, this is a suggestion that we made during the previous CAC, is we did propose doing regular meetings with the secretary. I can't recall if they were every trimester or every semester, but we had the opportunity to sit down with the secretary. And I know that the current secretary has pledged to continue supporting the CAC. But that also is great, because we can hear directly from department leadership feedback, and beyond what's within the plans, just give us an idea of what's down the pipeline, months or years from now. So more or less, those are some of the benefits that I've seen with the CAC, some of my personal frustrations, and tips on how I think we can conquer those frustrations and turn them into strengths. So again, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much, Luis. Our next panelist is a Spanish-speaking panelist. So please, if you need interpretation services from Spanish to English, you can activate the interpretation services clicking the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, so you can learn from Dulce everything that she's going to share with us. Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes y gracias por la oportunidad de participar en este evento. Dice aquí alguien en el chat que no hay un global emoji on Zoom. A lo mejor le pueden ayudar.
See, if you don't see it at the bottom of the screen, maybe you can click the 3 dots icon, the more icon, and there you will find interpretation service. Let us know if that works. Thank you.
¿Todo está bien?
Go ahead.
Ok. Pues nuevamente, muchas gracias por la oportunidad de participar. Me honra, ¿verdad?, poder aportar desde lo que es nuestra comunidad en Culebra. Mi nombre es Dulce del Río Pineda, como mencionaron, soy la coordinadora organizacional de Mujeres de Islas y he sido miembro del Comité Asesor Comunitario que designó el Departamento de la Vivienda ¿verdad?, en el año 2022. A lo cual también vivo agradecida. Quería aportar, si pasamos un poco La próxima lámina, por favor. Maritere, si puedes pasar la laminilla, por favor. Bueno, pues seguimos. No sé cuántos de ustedes conocen. Maritere, estoy esperando que pases a la próxima. Gracias. Pues no sé cuántos de ustedes conocen dónde está localizado Culebra con respecto a nuestro archipiélago. Culebra es la parte más, ¿verdad? El espacio más este de nuestro archipiélago y está pues cercano a nuestra isla hermana de Vieques. Para nosotras, en Mujeres de Isla, fue importante que cuando se abrió la oportunidad de crear ¿verdad? Una persona que pudiera ser el alterno o alterna a la presentación de Mujeres de Isla o la representación de Mujeres de Isla, pues se escogiera a una compañera, en este caso de Vieques Loft, de Vieques. Y esto fue porque, aunque somos islas hermanas y tenemos muchísimas cosas en común, como por ejemplo ¿verdad? Transporte marítimo todavía con muchas áreas a mejorar, que tenemos también nuestras particularidades. Esto nos trae a preguntarnos también cuando uno representa una comunidad, y esto estoy atándolo a lo que compartió tanto Luis Gallardo como la compañera Rosana, es que nunca vamos a poder abarcar a cada una de las comunidades necesariamente, pero sí poder que cada una de esas comunidades sienta que tiene un potencial de voz. Y creo que ahí hay un área a mejorar. No tanto estoy señalando aquí al gobierno, sino a los que estamos representando a nuestras comunidades y a nuestro, ¿verdad? Archipiélago, nuestros ofrecimientos. Si pasamos a la próxima lámina, pues vemos que Puerto Rico, como muchos saben también, ha estado pasando y nos imaginamos seguiremos pasando, ¿verdad? Desde lo más cercano que por lo menos la memoria de la mayoría de nosotros tiene, es el huracán Hugo. A lo mejor algunos de ustedes son mucho más jóvenes y no lo recuerdan, pero Culebra sufrió muchísimo, al igual que Vieques y otras áreas de Puerto Rico, pero así han pasado y hemos seguido recibiendo diferentes impactos que nos han llevado a cuestionarnos cómo poder realmente servir a una comunidad cuando es el gobierno central el que está recibiendo los fondos. Así que para mi sorpresa, cuando tú recibí esa invitación al Comité de Asesor Ciudadano, dije, esto es una oportunidad realmente única. Así que para todos aquellos que estoy leyendo, que están preguntando si es el momento, cómo puedo participar si yo soy simplemente alguien de la comunidad, pues busquen esa página, por lo menos en el caso de Puerto Rico, ¿verdad? En esa página del Departamento de la Vivienda, que tiene a su vez, aunque no está actualizado al momento, pero me imagino que ya pronto lo harán porque son muy eficientes en esto, los nuevos miembros pues escoger de esos miembros quién usted conoce, qué organización usted conoce y comunicarse con esa organización. Decir, mira, yo como miembro de una comunidad o líder comunitaria, quiero aportar a este esfuerzo. Porque nuestro equipo contempla gente que cubre varios municipios, ¿verdad? Así que les exhorto a que esa es una manera eficiente de poder desde la comunidad también hacer el reclamo o el espacio para que sus voces sean escuchadas. Si pasamos más adelante, el próximo, pues también quiero tocar la importancia de los foros públicos y como vemos en algunos de ellos hay muchas más concurrencias que en otros y se debió a muchos factores, pero esto es algo que sabemos que podemos mejorar. Tanto de la parte, ya lo hicimos como parte de ¿verdad? De revisar y evaluar o hacer un avalúo de las presentaciones. En cuanto a la localidad, ¿verdad? Cómo se anunció, cómo cada uno de nosotros puede aportar a los horarios, ¿verdad? Y traigo, por ejemplo, en el caso de Culebra, que lo vemos en la otra lámina, si quieres pasarlo, pues se hizo en la noche, porque para Culebra, durante el día Nosotros tenemos muy poco desempleo, por lo tal todo el mundo está trabajando, inclusive en las noches, pero hay muchísima más oportunidad de participación que en el día. Así que se hicieron los ajustes y para mí fue significativo que estos compañeros del Departamento de la Vivienda, que son nuestro enlace, ¿verdad? Con el Departamento de la Vivienda, se dieron a la tarea de asegurar que no solo en estos 3 lugares que habíamos acordado, que fue Arecibo, Mayagüez y Fajardo, sino que se reconociera que transportarnos desde las islas municipios a uno de estos foros era imposible. Y el verles a ellos llegar a Culebra significa, eh, eh, significa que hay un interés genuino de unirnos con todos los retos, como decía Rosana, y con todas las áreas a mejorar que compartía Gallardo, que no voy a, ¿verdad? A volver a repetir. Lo que sí aseguro es que es un modelo a seguir. Este comité de asesoría ciudadana nos presenta la oportunidad de, como dice una colega, Loretta Ross, en su libro Calling In, es una oportunidad de seguir atrayéndonos y asegurando que nuestras voces sean escuchadas a la vez que sumamos las voces que tal vez no sienten que pueden ser escuchadas. Se intenta a través de, ¿verdad?, los nombramientos del CAC integrar a todas las diferentes y posibles grupos que se identifican, por ejemplo, con la comunidad LGBTQ, la comunidad de adultos mayores. Y si pasamos a la otra lámina que vemos en la composición de ese comité de asesoría ciudadana previo, ¿verdad? Hasta el 2024, pues tenemos representación de lo que es el sistema de cuidado continuo, ¿verdad? Para personas que están sin hogar, en los acueductos comunitarios, ya mencioné Vieques, el Puerto Rico por una derecho a una vivienda digna, que es un grupo también que acoge a un grupo significativo de comunidades, Habitat for Humanity, Ways Ahead, ¿verdad? Que es para adultos mayores también ¿verdad? Que representan esa comunidad LGBTQ, y la Coordinadora Paz para la Mujer, que representa al grupo de mujeres que están en situaciones de violencia, ¿verdad?, doméstica. Tenemos también a las personas de lo que es personas retiradas, o lo que se conoce en inglés como AARP, por sus siglas en inglés, comunidades que han estado organizadas hace muchísimos años, como PESE. Ya el compañero se presentó, Luis Gallardo, del Centro de Organización del Hábitat. Y algo que quería, así como, ¿verdad? Nosotros, en itálico puse algunos de los que ahora a lo mejor no van a estar con nosotros, pero se unen unos nuevos miembros. Y yo creo que en todas estas posibles cambios, lo que aspiramos es a fortalecer el equipo, a asegurar que los que nos representan, los que estamos allí sentados, nos miramos y reflexionamos y haciendo un análisis, como dijo Luis, si realmente voy a poder dedicar el tiempo que va a necesitar el participar en este comité. Tuvimos, tristemente, ¿verdad? Pero tuvimos que, a través del Consejo Coordinador, que también es parte de lo que en el caso de Puerto Rico en su guía establece, ese consejo decidió que si habían tantas ausencias, pues no se podía seguir participando y había que buscar una alternativa a eso. Así que por eso ustedes ven que hay como unos tachones, pero realmente no es porque los quisimos tachar, es que si para entrar a un grupo se te invita con la expectativa de una participación y por razones que no hay hasta el momento una justificación escrita o detallada, no puedes o no pueden participar, pues entonces hay que dar espacio a otros. Así que yo siento una gran responsabilidad cuando acepto participar en estas oportunidades, porque no es por Mujeres de Isla, no es por Dulce del Río Pineda, es porque uno puede tener una voz en decisiones que van a impactar la vida de muchos. Así que la próxima lámina presenta a un grupo, como mencionó el compañero Luis. Yo les pongo aquí las caras de esas personas que él expresó, que han sido baluarte para que este éxito que hoy podemos compartir con ustedes sea una realidad, con todas las áreas a mejorar, con todos los puntos que podamos tocar, pero que hoy Puerto Rico pueda, ¿verdad?, presentar a ustedes esta opción que, que pues, podemos decir que ha dado resultado en gran parte por estos tres, ¿verdad?, servidores de nuestro gobierno, que es Gwendolyn, Joan y Jorge. Así que públicamente les agradezco, porque como bien dijo Luis, hay momentos en que uno inclusive de toda la abrumación o del tiempo no nos recordábamos tal vez de que, mira, esto es algo que hay que enviar para mañana, y pues sacábamos entonces esa tarde porque tanto Gwendolyn o Joan o Jorge nos los mandaban recuerden que tenemos hasta mañana, si necesitan más tiempo, hay que ver si nos dan más tiempo. Así que creo que es para aquellos que están buscando cómo ¿verdad?, en su estado o jurisdicción puedan asegurar tener un equipo. Es indispensable que en el caso de Puerto Rico se determinó este equipo enlace, que ha sido excelente. Así que para nosotros, desde Culebra, le agradecemos a ella. También se suma otros miembros del Departamento de la Vivienda, como el señor Carlos Olmedo, etcétera. Así que quiero que reconozcamos que eso es importante. Es importante escuchar a las comunidades, es importante escuchar lo que, ¿verdad?, el gobierno necesita de nosotros, y ver cómo podemos seguir armonizando esa conversación para beneficiar a aquellos que a lo mejor en este momento no tienen el acceso a leer los documentos, a poder interpretarlos, a poder dar la opinión. Pero sí podemos llevarle de alguna manera estas preguntas o estas inquietudes, y si no es así, por lo menos llevarle la información de dónde pueden acceder las posibilidades de estos fondos. Así que no me queda más que darle las gracias por escuchar y por participar en esta oportunidad de intercambio a la orden en Culebra, y espero que cada uno de los que están aquí, si son de Puerto Rico, se integren a estas voces que estamos hoy compartiendo con ustedes la experiencia, y si son de alguna otra jurisdicción, hoy mismo, ahora mismo, busquen la manera de crearlo. Gracias.
Thank you very, very much, Dulce. You just heard a really personal experience of being a member of the CAC from Luis and Dulce, and all the areas of opportunity that the Citizen Advisory Committee in Puerto Rico has, and also the positive area of the collaboration from state agencies with the local nonprofit organizations. I want to echo the invitation from Luis and Dulce to the state agencies that are part of the audience here today to learn from these experiences and open the door of collaboration to your nonprofits and community organizations. It will be a valuable experience that will enhance the programs, the CDBG-DR programs that you're going to implement or you are implementing in your jurisdiction. Having said that, soon we are going to start the Q&A section, but before that, I just wanted to first thanks all the panelists and then let know the audience that we're going to share the recording of this webinar. Also, we are going to share with you additional resources, specifically, access to the HUD Universal Notice that Noah Patton discussed previously. Also to the Puerto Rico's CAC Operational Guide in English and Spanish, and to the Puerto Rico's CAC transparency portal in English and Spanish, so that if you want to learn more, you can access those documents. Please, if you have, after this webinar, if you want to contact us, here's our contact information. And again, we will share all of this with the registration list with the audience. And now we're gonna stop the recording officially.